Welcome to this week's edition of the Jungle Juice podcast. I'm Sam Gormley. He's Mick Nelson. Mick, happy Virgil Carter, Lavernius Coles, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Brandon LaFell, John Ross, Dane Sanzenbacher, Jordan Shipley, Trent Taylor, and of course, Akili Smith. Days until Bengals Patriots Week 1.
We're almost to single-digit days here.
Yeah, and it is on Friday when we can finally get to single digits for Bengals Patriots. It seems like we were at like 78 days like just a couple of weeks ago, and it is flying by. But I'm getting more and more excited. I don't know about you, but I am getting more and more excited as the days goes along.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great time every time football comes around. We got college football coming up. I guess tomorrow. Really, there's some games that are on the docket tomorrow on Thursday night. We're gonna have a full Saturday of college football, and then the NFL is gonna be right around the corner. So yeah, it's football season's a great time of year. September is just a great month in general in Cincinnati. You got Oktoberfest. The weather starts getting a lot better. Yeah, I can't wait. So I'm excited.
I'm lucky that I even get to go to a college football game coming up on Saturday. I'm going to see Kentucky play Southern Miss, which is going to be really exciting. They at Kroger Field, for Kentucky this year, they finally have the LED lights, where they can do all of the fun stuff like they do at Paycor Stadium, and everybody is really, really excited. So I'm looking forward to it. But it's just good to get into the stadium and start things off that way. But we got a big show planned for you today, as, of course, Bengals taking on the Patriots is 11 days away. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive all the way into a Bengals season preview. But to do a proper Bengals season preview show, we really got to preview the AFC and really ask the question of, are the Bengals good enough to win the AFC and get back to the Super Bowl this year and get to New Orleans? It's a big question, and I don't know the answer to it, and it's going to be something that we're going to discuss throughout the show. But to do that, we're going to have to go through all of these AFC teams. Who's good? Who's not? Who might be the regression? Mick nailed his regression candidate last year, so maybe he'll make a call on his regression candidate this year. I mean, you nailed it, Mick. They only, were the one seed in the AFC?
Yeah, what did they go? They go 15-2 last year, 14-3.
Something like that. The Ravens.
I was not a believer in the Todd Monken offense, and Todd Monken said, "Well, you're wrong," and they had a really lethal offensive attack. So,
and see, here's the thing: is that I have a regression candidate this year. I'm going to drop it. That I feel like there is a very good chance that I'm going to be looking like you at the end of the season. But I'm willing to put it out there because we're on a podcast, so we have to have hot takes, right?
We do.
We invite you, though, to follow us on our social media channels. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We are technically also on Twitter as well. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform as well. Give us a 5-star rating. That really helps us expand this show. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on all of the ones for you to do that. But let's waste no more time, Mick, and start it off the way we have to start every single show. Ja'Marr Chase. And the situation since we last talked has gotten really, really interesting, even more so. So to recap, last week when we were talking, it's still all about the contract and so on. He returns to practice on Sunday and Monday, and everyone's thinking, okay, preseason's over, Ja'Marr is back, we're good. Yesterday, Zach Taylor's doing a press conference, and he says he expects him to play against the Patriots. He was asked by the media and said, do you expect Ja'Marr to play week 1? Zach Taylor said yes. Well, that brings us to today. Ja'Marr Chase, does not practice today. He was late to practice, shows up in street clothes, and is not there. Now, in this realm as well, since we last talked, CeeDee Lamb has gone off the market, signs a 4-year, $136 million contract, $67 million guaranteed. Mick, I ask you this question every single week. Are you worried?
I'm not worried he's not going to play, but I mean, it's just crazy that they're just, they're just repeating the same cycle again. And and the way that they're handling it, I don't know if I can really trust a word that's coming out of Zach Taylor's mouth when he's just like, "Oh yeah, this is just a day-to-day thing again." It's just crazy. I mean, shows up 15 minutes late to practice in street clothes after Zach was all excited about him coming back to practice, saying he's going to be here, he's ready to go. He's just I just love that they're doing the same cycle again with the way that they're handling things there.
Does a deal get done? I'm saying
Probably
before they play the Patriots. Before they play the Patriots, does a deal get done?
I hope so, but I don't think it will.
You don't think so? What are you putting the percent chance?
I'm probably like 20% chance. I mean, it's a tough situation, right? The Bengals don't want to extend Jamar Chase with 2 years left on the contract. There's been precedent set by the Cowboys and the Vikings and the way that they handled their extensions with CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. I mean, they were kind of dealing with the same dilemma last year. So I'm not sure. I'm kind of torn on which side to kind of be on with this. Definitely can't fault Jamar for trying to secure his future and try to, and so forth. But, you can't really blame the Bengals for being a little more hesitant, especially given where they are in terms of their finances. They're not the richest team in the NFL. They're actually the poorest NFL team in the NFL in terms of their net worth. So, they are less risk averse than a team like the Broncos, who's owned by the Walton family, or the Jaguars, who's owned by Shad Khan, or Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. Even though Jerry Jones is one of the more, I think, conservative owners in the league in terms of dabbling into free agency and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I hope it gets done. I don't think it probably will at this point.
And really, I don't know that there's much more than we can say that we've not already said in the last couple of weeks. We think it should get done. I don't know that it will get done. And really, we're just in this waiting game. And I think I do feel bad for Zach Taylor because he is in a awful position here. Because he is trying to cater to every single party and trying to keep everyone happy. And it's got to be tough for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy situation to be in. You got to keep the fan base happy and tell them what they want to hear. You're kind of in the middle of a I don't want to say a fight, but you're in the middle of
it's kind of like
between the front office and a player, and it's not like an easy spot to be in by any means.
Zach Taylor is the kid, and his parents are fighting, and his parents are trying to bring him into it. And he's like, whoa, no. I'm going to stay out here. I want both people to be happy because I want you all to be happy because I want you all to be together. And that's kind of, I think, the long story short when it comes to this. But really, I don't know that there's much more that needs to be said when it comes to it. So how about we jump into the 53-man? That was finalized yesterday. Not really any major surprises from it. The big one, Muma Jongmeta made the team. When we did our 53-man roster projection a couple of weeks ago, Mick, you nailed it. Projecting that Muma would make the team.
One of the few I nailed.
That was one of your big ones. Now, I get to give myself a pat on the back, which really, this wasn't like it was that wild of a take that I made. 5 tight ends, the Bengals do go with. That was something that I did predict. And then 3 running backs at that time. We're going to come back to that here in a few minutes. They also, as I predicted, 5 safeties and 5 corners. Dejon Anthony makes the team, as does Tyson Anderson, Jalen Davis on the way out. And then late last week, we learned something that I don't think shocked anybody except for Alex Schubert, and that was Jackson Carman was released as well. Was there any takeaways that you had from the 53 that surprised you? Jay Tufele made the roster, but I think that's more because McKinley Jackson is hurt. They need somebody to potentially play that nose tackle position just because whether he's good or not, he at least can play it.
Yeah.
And with McKinley Jackson probably not going to be ready week 1, I don't know. A couple other things that happen with that is the IR designated to return. So the Bengals get to do this to 2 players. And that means that they're out the first 4 weeks of the season. And then after 4 weeks, they can bring them back. And I think it's something like they get 3 weeks then to bring them back from the injury before they have to make a roster decision. I think that's the rule with it. They do that with Brad Robbins. So that means Ryan Rico is your punter. And then Miles Murphy. They also on PUP put DJ Ivey, which I don't think was a surprise. We didn't see him at all in the preseason. He's still rehabbing from the ACL injury that he had late in the year. But was there any major takeaways that you had from the 53?
Not a lot. It was cool to see Muma John Meta make the team. I think he's had a pretty decent preseason. Definitely looks like the fifth best linebacker on the team. So yeah, I was pretty pleased with that. Was surprised with the 5 tight ends. I think 4 is honestly on the verge of too many, but with the implementation of the new kickoff rules, that definitely could have had something to play into them keeping 5 tight ends. And then you also have just 5 good NFL caliber tight ends, and it's kind of hard to part ways with any of them. So, I mean, I'm happy that Tanner Hudson's back. Did not think that. I think he would have been the odd man out if they were to if they decided to keep 4. But he's back, so I was kind of surprised with the 5 tight ends. Going skinny on the offensive line was kind of surprising. I mean, they've traditionally kept 10 offensive linemen every year of the Zach Taylor era. They're only keeping 9 this time around. So that I think that kind of raises some questions with depth. Now, with cuts that have happened over the past day or two, is there a chance that they bring in a Max Sharping type of signing to the offensive line? I think that's something to definitely keep an eye out for. But other than that, not many takeaways here. I am interested to see once Brad Robbins is back from IR, is he going to be taking over the punter job, or is Ryan Rico going to be the punter for the future here?
I think you ask us that question in 4 weeks. I think what the Bengals have said is, okay, Ryan Rico, you've got 4 weeks. Win it or lose it. Because if we're being honest, in the preseason, I don't know that he necessarily lost it, but he really didn't help himself. Because he easily could have gone out there and made it to where they would have just said, sorry, Brad, we know you're hurt, but sorry. And now you're giving Rico this extra chance. You're giving him 4 weeks. And if we close the Carolina game and we're all like, gosh, this guy sucks, then I think you say, okay, Brad, it's your job.
Yeah. His punting this past game against the Colts, it was a lot of hit or miss, kind of like it's been all preseason. Had 6 punts. Half of them were inside the 20. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty good rate. 42 yards per attempt or yards per punt, net of 37 yards. You'd like to see that be a little bit higher. And then hang time, 4.55 seconds. I mean, I think that's fairly decent.
That's good.
So, yes. Yeah.
And net punting in the preseason is always really tough too, because you got to think of who are his special teams coverage guys.
Yeah.
You know, are any of those, like, is Lance Robinson playing special teams when Lance Robinson, is technically, I think, still on the team because of an injury. So I think they've at least helped him in there. But with something like that, of how much of that aspect of it was his net punting and how much of that was Ryan Rico, we won't know that until these first 4 games of the season. And I'm really interested to see with that. The Bengals did make a claim. They claimed KJ Henry from the Commanders. He was a 5th-round pick out of Clemson last year. Played in 10 games last year. 10 pressures on 155 pass rush snaps. 6.2% win rate, that is, which, Mick, is below average, right?
Not great.
6.2. But in the preseason, again, I know, preseason, his pass rush win rate, 21%. That'll get it done if he does that. Of course, You're saying defensive end from Clemson last year. Does that mean? Yes, of course, college teammates with Miles Murphy. So in a lot of ways, he's just sliding into the spot that is vacated by both Miles Murphy and Cam Sample, of them being out with injuries. Bengals needed help on that defensive line. It makes a lot of sense that you get somebody that there's some familiarity there with.
Yeah. And another point to add on there. I mean, he's just in his second year in the league. He was on I guess, a lackluster pass rush or a disappointing pass rush with the Commanders last year, where I think he saw a decent amount of snaps once they traded away Montez Sweat to the Chicago Bears. But if we go back, and Chase Young, they traded him to, or did they release him or they trade him?
No, they traded him to the Niners.
Anyways, he left and went to the Niners. But we go back to his college days. I mean, the numbers are fairly impressive. Now, it is ACC football, and this is definitely an upgrade over that. But 83 defensive grade, 79 run defense grade, 84 pass rush grade. You have 53 total pressures, 5 sacks, 14 QB hits, 34 hurries. Had 5 batted passes, which I think is something of note. Missed tackling, not a lot of it in his senior year over at Clemson, only 6.5% missed tackle rate. I think that is a pretty good rate. His coverage was decent, only gave up 5 receptions on 7 targets for 33 yards, did give up a touchdown. Now he's playing off the edge, so not a lot of opportunity there. So, yeah, I think that, it adds a little bit of depth to the D-line. We lost Cam Sample for the season, so you needed to bring somebody in to add that layer of depth to the D-line. So I'm happy with the signing.
To make that waiver claim as well, they did have to make a release, and they cut Travion Williams, which is interesting because now you're saying, wait a second, does that mean the Bengals now only have 2 running backs on their active roster? Technically, yes. That is accurate. Travion Williams tweeted, though, this afternoon saying it's roster gymnastics. You might remember, I guess it's been 2, maybe even 3 years ago, the Bengals did the same thing with Brandon Allen. If you remember that they cut Brandon Allen, and there was a moment where Joe Burrow was the only quarterback technically on the roster. This is just because there's deals with it. Williams doesn't have to go through waivers because he's a vested veteran. It's just a bunch of rosters gymnastics. You're going to see Travion Williams back on this team probably in the next 24 hours, maybe even 48. I'm fascinated where the cut comes from. It might be a guy like Jay Tufele, but I also don't know that he's an obvious cut because he at least plays a position of need. Then it might be one of those tight ends that they try to sneak through now at this point, so I think it'll be really interesting. But when we're talking about the Bengals practice squad, a couple of notable names. Jalen Davis, he does make the practice squad. Cam Grandy, he is on it. I really like that tight end. And Logan Woodside as well. Cole Burgess, also on the team. Shedrick Jackson in there as well from the wide receiver position. Then it's also been rumored, not yet confirmed, that defensive tackle, nose tackle, Justin Rogers will be joining the fold as well. Rogers did his preseason at the Cowboys, and he was a draft pick out of Auburn. He spent his first couple of years at Kentucky, transferred to Auburn because Kentucky had a guy coming by the name of Deion Walker, who is going to be a top 10 pick potentially in the NFL, if not top 15. He's going to be a first-round pick coming up in next year's draft, so they were fine with letting Justin leave. He slid in here, and he was a guy the Bengals were looking at in potentially the later rounds. They brought him in on a pre-draft visit as well, so it makes a lot of sense for Justin Rogers to potentially be a guy to add to that practice squad room. Because if anything else, you've got that 3 times that you can bring a player up from the practice squad to the active roster. Maybe 3 weeks is all you need to get McKinley Jackson back. So maybe that is kind of one of those opportunities. But I think for the practice squad, seems like it's a good group, Nick.
Yeah. Don't have much of note on these guys, but good to see them filling out the practice squad. I guess it looks like we're seeing some new faces join the team here, so I'm excited for that.
And they have, if Rodgers is confirmed, they'll have 3 vacant spots to fill. I'll be interested to see how they go with that. So there you go. Those are your Bengals news headlines for the week. I don't think we really need to talk about the final Colts preseason game. It happened. I don't even know that I have a single takeaway from it. Did you want to talk about it? I'm
going to give you my honest opinion. I did not watch any of it. I have not watched any of it. No.
Really? I watched it.
This is kind of, what do you want to say? Like, I don't want to call it sacrilege or whatever. It's bad.
You shouldn't be admitting this as a podcast host.
I shouldn't. Yeah. Or as a Bengals fan, but no, I did not watch a single bit of the preseason game against the Colts. So yeah, looks like we pass blocked pretty well. Actually, grading was pretty high there. Run defense was pretty bad. Yeah, that's pretty much everything of note. I don't know. We were playing a bunch of third stringers out there.
I'm not. It's not even really. It's not even really worth our time to discuss. Really, I don't think anymore.
No,
so how about we jump?
Like the ones had a really good scrimmage against Anthony.
It did. It did sound like that, and we'll probably talk about Anthony Richardson here in a couple of minutes as well, because I think it's time for us to talk about the AFC. Because I think it's really interesting on how some of these teams have gotten better, worse, stayed the same, and so on, and how the Bengals stack up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go just division by division, team by team. We're going to talk through these. We'll end with the AFC North. And then at the end of the show, we're going to go through game by game for the Bengals, talk a little bit about that. So we're going to have a lot of information coming up. We're going to try and go through these decently quick, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start off with the AFC East. Buffalo. I know a couple of notes with them. They trade Stephon Diggs, Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Gabe Davis are out too. I mean, you look at this, Josh Allen, his wide receivers right now. Can you even name the 3 wide receivers he has on his depth chart, Mick?
Yeah. Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and Curtis Samuel.
There you go. There are your 3 wide receivers for the Buffalo Bills. That, to me, is the question. Is how much are they going to miss?
Candidate?
No, they are not.
They are not. Okay.
They are not my regression candidate. But it would make a lot of sense if they are.
Yeah, I mean,
are they your regression candidate?
They are not my regression candidate, and it's because I think their defense is still really, really, really good. Even with Leslie Frazier leaving and Sean McDermott, they're taking over the play calling duties on defense. And I think that's honestly an upgrade because of how good of a defensive play caller Sean McDermott was when he was with the Carolina Panthers. But they still have one of the best pass rush units in the league with players like Greg Rousseau, Daquan Jones, AJ Epineza. Good linebacker unit with Terrell Bernard, and the safeties are they've got one good safety in Taylor Rapp, DeMar Hamlin. He's decent, I think. Corners are also really good.
Be careful saying anything bad about DeMar Hamlin now.
I'm glad he's alive. But then also the defensive backs. I mean, I think they have maybe the best cornerback trio in the league, with Christian Benford, Rasul Douglas, and Teron Johnson in the slot. I think that's going to be the saving grace of this team. Now, Josh Allen's going to have to do a little more this year with Stephon Diggs leaving. But if we remember correctly, it's not like Stephon Diggs was heavily involved with the game plan towards the back end of 2023. You started seeing players like Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir take bigger roles on the offense, and Stephon Diggs is just, I don't know, doing what Stephon Diggs at the end of every 4 year, at the end of the 4th year of his current team does, which is just shut down, and the team wants to move on from him. So I think the Buffalo Bills are going to be pretty good. I'm glad we don't have to play them this year. Yeah.
Miami lose Christian Wilkins, so I know you're not necessarily that high on of a player.
I like Christian Wilkins.
Well, I guess you just didn't want him in Cincinnati, correct?
Oh, because of his age, yeah.
Yes.
Or either because of his age, or is because he cost too much money.
Cost too much money. Brought in Jordan Poyer, Kendall Fuller as well. The question really that I have as a whole, though, is it's like, are they better? And I don't know that they are. I feel like this is one team that you're really going to see like, same thing as last year for the most part.
Yeah, and I think those are the same notes I have. I don't think they've regressed by any means.
But I don't think they're better.
No, I don't think they're better either. I think that they've seen some turnover on the offensive line with players like Connor Williams leaving. I do think they upgraded the 3rd wide receiver position if he ever shows up and plays, with Odell Beckham Jr. Joining, probably taking over the slot role with the team. They still have the best backfield in the NFL with, maybe not, I don't know. It's up there with Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, and then adding Jalen Wright to the mix.
In case they needed to get any faster.
Yeah, just in case, And then also, I mean, they had to overhaul the edge rushers, adding Chop Robinson in the draft in the first round. Yeah, I think that was kind of a problem spot with them last year. Their lack of depth after their starters got hurt on that side of the ball. Still have Jalen Ramsey. They brought in Kendall Fuller this year with Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer in the secondary, which is still a really solid secondary as well. So I don't know if they got better. I definitely don't think they got worse. Probably going to see more of the same where they are, a wild card team. Maybe they actually win a wild card game this year, but don't see them making it much farther.
And they could compete to win the division if some things go the right way and so on. Jets, another really, really interesting team in this AFC East, and really to me that it's surrounding really one main question. I think you know exactly where I'm going is what's Aaron Rodgers? How's he going to come back from this injury? He is getting closer to 40 years old.
He is 40, I think.
I was going to say, is he 40? If not, I was meaning to look that up before the show. I can do it as we're talking.
I got it.
He is 40. Yes, he's just 40. And he'll be 41 in December. Father Time is undefeated, Nick. And this is Father Time after a major injury. I don't care what voodoo medicine he put on, whatever it is, that's interesting. They did add a lot to their offensive line. I mean, they made a lot of changes when it comes to that position. Defense is still solid. It's a really solid defense as well. But to me, it's all about Aaron Rodgers. It's all about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. So I like you. I think the defense does look pretty solid this year. I still think it is probably a top 10 defense. I think I have them ranked at number 10 in my defensive rankings this year. Have a lot of the same faces with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed taking over the cornerback spots. Jermaine Johnson's going to have a bigger role as an edge rusher because we don't know what's going to happen with Hassan Reddick. Quinnen Williams is back. They brought in Javon Kinlaw from San Francisco, who hasn't been great in his career so far, but maybe something can change with him being reunited with Robert Saleh. Quincy Williams, one of the most underrated linebackers in the game, and CJ Mosley, who's he's getting up there in age, but hasn't slowed down at all. So yeah, I think the defense is pretty good. The offense, I think, is a question mark, not only with players like Aaron Rodgers staying healthy and avoiding Father Time or maybe keep holding him off for another year. But you have a player like Mike Williams who's coming off of a season-ending injury last year, who's also dealt with his fair share of injuries. Aside from that, throughout his career, you've got Garrett Wilson, who kind of went into a slump last year because he had Zach Wilson as his quarterback again. And then who's going to take over that slot role? Is it going to be Alan Lazard, Mr. Slant, or is Malachi Corley going to end up?
It is Malachi Corley. He's going to be the guy.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. That's so. Yeah,
I do remember I was talking to somebody over the weekend. You're like, man, Malachi Corley's really good in Madden. I mean, which means he's going to be really good in real life.
Yeah, he played pretty good. But yeah, so I think the offense has the ability to be a middle of the road offense. Like you said, that we've seen some turnover on the offensive line. Tyron Smith coming in, I think, is a clear upgraded offensive tackle. Also have Olu Fashanu as an insurance policy, much like we have with Trent Brown and Amarius Mims. Elijah Vera Tucker has been a solid guard in the league, and then Morgan Moses coming in from Baltimore, I think was a good add as well. So, yeah.
We'll quickly go through here too. Patriots, we'll talk a lot more about them next week as well, obviously, with them being the Bengals opponent week 1. Tomorrow, they're going to be announcing their starting quarterback. It'll either be Jacoby Brissett or it will be Drake May. I guess technically Joe Milton is still technically a thing. I think it's safe to say Joe Milton will not be the Patriots starting quarterback week 1 unless something awful has happened. I'll be interested to see how that goes up. May look pretty decent in the preseason. The defense is good for the Patriots. The offense, I mean, you've got Stevenson still at the running back position, but you're going to be probably having at least a decent amount of Drake May this year and trying to see what you have in him in the starting quarterback position. I think the Patriots are a 4th place team in this division. but I think they will be a little bit better than they were last year.
Yeah, I don't think they're a regression candidate. I do have them placing fourth as well. The question is how's Drake May going to be? How's he going to handle this offensive line and the pressure he could potentially face from it? They don't have a set starting tackle yet. We've heard. I think the latest I've heard is that Chukwuma Okorafor is going to be taking over one of the tackle spots, with Micah Wenu obviously taking over the right tackle, which Okorafor hasn't been that great in his career in Pittsburgh. So that's kind of a position to watch. The interior offensive line, they got a rookie in Layden Robinson coming from Texas A&M. He was a 4th-round draft pick. Then you have players like David Andrews and Sidey Sow, who, are okay. The defense, though, I do think is pretty good. Like you said, they've got a good cornerback room with Christian Gonzalez coming back from injury, and he had a pretty, encouraging start to his NFL career before he suffered a season-ending injury. It's going to be interesting to see how he comes back. You have Marcus Jones in the slot still, Jonathan Jones, and then, in the safety room, good safety duo, and Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers. I do think this is going to be a better team this year. I think it's better with Jacoby Brissett in. I know that the preseason wasn't great, but just given what we've seen in his career, I think he is a really good gap quarterback.
Who wins the division? Who wins the division? We'll quickly go through this and make our division pick, because we'll have to speed up a little bit as we go through these AFC teams so we can get into the Bengals as well. Who wins?
But Bills. We'll go with Bills.
I agree, but it wouldn't shock me if it's the Dolphins or the Jets.
Yeah.
Wouldn't shock me. Now, the Jets, it would have to be vintage Rodgers, I think, to win that division, but it wouldn't necessarily shock me, because if Rodgers gets hurt, then that Jets team, I don't think they're finishing 4th, but I think they're a solid 3rd.
Yeah.
Without Aaron Rodgers. AFC South. We'll start off with the defending champions, the Houston Texans. They add Danielle Hunter, Joe Mixon, Azeez Al-Shaair, Danico Autry. They add a lot to that team. The question is CJ Stroud for real? Or was this just a 1-year hype train? Do people kind of figure out what he is? And here you go, Mick. My regression candidate is the Texans.
Really?
That's my hot take. And
that's your regression candidate.
That is. And listen, hey, we got to have a hot take on this podcast, right? So there you go. You can go ahead and do it. It's a similar realm to you having last year of the Ravens as a regression candidate. So I'm going to say the Texans. To me, the Texans right now remind me a lot, and I was having this discussion with our good friend Alex Schubert a couple of weeks ago. Remind me a lot of the Marlins. Remember baseball? About 10, 15 years ago, when in one offseason they went and they added like Jose Reyes. They added Mark Burley. They added like a bunch of guys and spent a lot of money. And people were like, oh, Marlins, they're actually going to do something. And then they proceeded to go, I think, like 67 and whatever. And just, it did not work.
So because I'll give you a football example of this, which is probably better.
And Alex gave me one as well, and it's probably going to be the same one that you were.
2010 or 2011 Philadelphia Eagles, and when they went out and, Michael Vick had that first really good year with the Eagles. They went out and they spent money on a bunch of guys like Nnamdi Asomugha. I can't even remember who the hell they brought out.
I remember what you're saying as well. I got to try and see if I can't remember what Alex's example was, because he actually had a really good one as well. But I think that, to me, for those reasons, I'm just really interested in how it ends up working out. And listen, I could be wrong, but hey,
there are some like glaring holes with this roster, particularly on the offensive line. I mean, I know you have Laramie Tunzel coming back and Shaq Mason coming back, who are two pretty good starters, but I mean, you have 3 guys in the offensive line, one coming off a really bad year. Well, I mean, 2 of them coming off really bad years. One of them was hurt all of last year, and his first year in the league wasn't great. You have in Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, and Titus Howard. So those are 3 big question marks at an important position group. Another question mark, I guess, in position group is their defensive back group. They have a rookie starting from Georgia, 2nd-round pick, Kamari Lassiter. Jalen Petre comes back, who was okay last year. Derek Stingley did take a step forward in his quality of play, being up to that number 3 overall pick. You got Jimmy Ward, who's getting another year older, who's been in the league for quite a long time, or quite a while. And then their linebacker room, is that going to get better with, Christian Harris had a decent year last year, but is Henry, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, 2-0? Is he going to, is he going to improve after a fairly bad 2023 season? So I think there are some question marks on the roster, but at the end of the day, one, they're in the AFC South, which is a weak division. In two, they have, I would say, I don't know where I have them ranked, the second best wide receiver trio in the league after the San Francisco 49ers. So I think those are two really important position groups to have be really good. So I still see them winning the division this year.
And you know me, I've said it once in this podcast, I'll say it again. Joe Mixon, like the stats say, and it might be the Bengals offensive line, it might be the Bengals scheme, but the stats say he should slow down. And I mean, if we're being honest, Joe Mixon is an old running back. As far as when you're not, now I'm not saying necessarily age-wise, I'm more just saying carries-wise. He is an old running back.
Yeah,
and Father
he's
Time
had a lot of
comes from us
usage.
all.
Yep.
Father Time comes from us all. Colts. The biggest story for them is you get a healthy Anthony Richardson and a healthy Jonathan Taylor. They add a beast on defense in Latu, who I think he might be the defensive rookie of the year. Like that
I
very
think there's
well
a good chance he is. He absolutely tore it up in preseason.
I'm not sure if I've looked at the odds. That might be something I might have to slide some money on the old DraftKings. If that
I'd imagine he's probably the best odds, I would think.
But what,
the
plus
lowest odds?
400 maybe would be probably the best odds for that. I'd be interested, and I can look it up as we're talking here. I am not on the Anthony Richardson train. I think it was a mistake to pick him as high as they did. And this season is going to depend on whether Anthony Richardson is legitimate or not.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see if Anthony Richardson takes that step forward and becomes a Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen, or is he going to become the next Trey Lance, where injuries curtailed him, in his rookie season, and he just never could get anything going after that. Now, the scrimmage that we had against him would tell us that we don't know if he's going to be that great of a quarterback. Apparently,
and he didn't look great in the preseason either. In the preseason game against the Bengals, he had one drive that looked really good, and then made an awful throw that was a pick six for Jordan Battle, and then it went downhill from there. Latu's plus 425 too.
Okay,
as the favorite.
That's a good bet. But yeah, I think that if there's a regression candidate, I think the Colts are up there. I mean, I don't have a lot of confidence in their offense. They do have a good offensive line, which is a good thing for Anthony Richardson, but it's not like the receiving room is great. I mean, they do have Michael Pittman, who's a solid wide receiver. I think he's kind of in the realm of a T. Higgins in terms of the value that he provides to a team. You got Josh Downs in year 2, and he had an encouraging rookie season as a slot guy. But you have Alec Pierce still as the other outside wide receiver, which it seems like he's just a go ball guy at this point.
You got A.D. Mitchell too, who they did draft.
Yep, you do have A.D. Mitchell, who they did draft, who probably takes over Alec Pierce's spot. And then, I think the defense is still pretty good with players like DeForest Buckner, Latu, who you've already mentioned, Kwity Paye. I think that their edge rushers are good. Their pass rush is going to be decent, but their defensive backfield's a little barren. They do have Kenny Moore, but that's pretty much it. Julian Blackmon, I guess. So I think that for a team that went 9-8 last year, I think that they're probably a regression candidate to go to not be as good, I guess.
Jags, biggest thing for them stands out is you replace Calvin Ridley with Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Trevor Lawrence is like, you did what now? What? And where did he go? He went to our division rival? What? They did add Eric Armstead, but I know they are one of your big regression candidates as well. We're just saying that the AFC South is regression candidates, pretty much.
Kind of. We'll wait on the Titans here, but yeah, I just don't see a lot that I like about the Jags roster. I feel bad for Trevor Lawrence, honestly. Where, I mean, they don't have a clear-cut number one wide receiver again. I mean, it's been pretty much Trevor Lawrence's entire career where he's just dealt with, like, I don't know, mid wide receivers. Like, they're okay. Christian Kirk's been okay his entire career. Gabe Davis is an okay outside receiver. I guess the jury's kind of out on Brian Thomas, but I mean, he kind of just ran go balls like for LSU last year, just like Gabe Davis has done his entire career. The offensive line's got a lot of question marks. Anton Harrison going into year two did not have a good first year. He's going to have to improve a lot. Ezra Cleveland, who is going into year 3 or 4, has not lived up to, hasn't played well. You do bring in Mitch Morse from Buffalo in the center position. I think that's an upgrade over who they have, Tyler Shatley, then Brandon Scherf and Cam Robinson. The defense, I'm not too confident in either. Not great pass rush. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. They do not have a great pass rush.
Let's just go into the Titans then here now,
Okay.
just so we can actually. We're going. This might be a marathon podcast here. We got a lot.
Dude,
to discuss here.
Yeah, I'm already.
We've got it. I know, and you usually at about the 65-minute mark, that's when Mick's bladder starts to knock and say, "Hey." Yeah. So that means that we got, and as he proceeds to drink more. So we don't need that. If anything, you'll just have to put it down, and I'll keep us talking while you go and do that. Titans, of course, Brian Callahan is their new head coach. They added a lot. I mean, they add Calvin Ridley, they add Lloyd Cushenberry, they add Tony Pollard to the offense. On defense, they add L'Jarius Sneed. And here's the thing, Mick, and I don't think this is necessarily that hot of a take. If Will Levis is a legitimate NFL quarterback, the Titans win the division.
I think they're a candidate. I think that they where do I have them placed at?
But it's Will Levis. And listen, I'm the Kentucky fan. I've seen Will Levis look really good. And the question is this, as you mentioned the thing with Anthony Richardson. This is the question of Will Levis. Is he more like a Josh Allen, or is he more like a I don't even know who would be the example of a guy who didn't work out. Is he Mitch Trubisky? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the perfect.
Yeah, that's a good one. Or maybe like a Jameis or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Where does he say? Because if he is closer to Josh Allen, I think this Titans roster wins the division. Because you also got to think another aspect that I don't think people are talking about enough is Brian Callahan. What's his best asset? His dad, Bill Callahan, best offensive line coach in the NFL. Followed him to there. It's going to improve that offensive line. You're already getting a better in Lloyd Cushenberry. You're expecting to see jumps out of, they draft Latham. You've got the other guy that they just drafted as well, whose name's now escaping me.
Petit-Frere.
No, who's the guy that they drafted last year before?
Peter Skronsky.
Thank you. From Northwestern. You're hoping to see jumps there, so I think they very well could win this division. Yeah,
I think that they've got they're my second place team in the AFC South this year, but I think if this season doesn't work out for Will Levis, then I think the Titans have their clear answer that he is not their quarterback of the future. Because they've completely overhauled the wide receiver room, bringing in although they're older, but vets with proven track record in the NFL, with DeAndre Hopkins coming back for a second season, Calvin Ridley coming in from Jacksonville, and Tyler Boyd coming in from yours truly. Defense looks pretty good too. Having Devondre Sweat in that defense, I think adds a lot to their defensive line, not only in terms of weight, but his skill set. I think that this is a pretty decent roster. Also, the defensive back room's gotten better with L'Jarius Sneed coming in and Chidobe Awuzie taking over that other corner spot.
Who wins the AFC South?
I'm still going Texans.
You know what? I'm going to say it, Titans. I'm going to say Will Levis turns out to be a good quarterback, and that might be just a smidge biased. But you know what? I don't care. We're a smidge biased on this show. So I'm going to say the Titans win the division, but I sent this text message to Alex Schubert a couple of weeks ago, and I think it could be accurate. This could be a 9-8, like everybody's 9-8. I think the Jags might be a little bit below that, but still, I think you could see a world where this is very similar to last year, where it's one game last week is deciding how this division is going to go along. A division that's not necessarily like that is the AFC West. In case you didn't know, Mick, the Kansas City Chiefs have won the last 2 Super Bowls. And, well, are they better? I don't know. I mean, they re-signed Chris Jones. Probably are better at the wide receiver position. They did cut Kadarius Toney. And, I mean, here's the fact of the matter. They still have Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know that there's really that much more than needs to be said. Is they still have the best quarterback in the NFL, the best player in the NFL. The big question for them is what kind of an impact will losing L'Jarius Sneed and Willie Gay and so on have on them?
Yeah, and I think if any coordinator is going to get that figured out, it's probably Spags, right? I mean, I still think that they're a top 10 defensive unit, even with L'Jarius Sneed leaving the team here, because they still have really good players like Trent McDuffie, like Chris Jones coming back. Shamari Connor had an encouraging year last year. Joshua Williams, my bad, not Joanne Williams. Joshua Williams, decent year with the 74 PFF grade. And yeah, they still have their safety duo in Brian Cook and Justin Reed. So I think that the defense will rebound. And I think the offense got a lot better this year. As long as Rashee Rice is on the field, we don't know what his suspension is going to be. Is there going to even be a suspension, Sam?
That's a good question. I haven't heard anything.
I haven't heard anything on it.
You'd think something would be announced by now.
About it by now. Yeah. But they brought in Xavier Worthy, wide receiver out of Texas, the speedster who broke John Ross's 40-yard dash record, and Marquise Brown, who I think has been one of the more underrated wide receivers in the league his entire career.
And they got rid of Kadarius Toney, which is a win as well.
Kadarius Toney. And then really a big question mark is going to be the offensive tackle spot, both offensive tackle spots. I mean, Jawan Taylor, one, hasn't had a great career and had his worst year of his career last year with a 49.8 blocking grade. Then you have an offensive tackle prospect they got in the second round in Kingsley Suamataia from BYU, who has been labeled as kind of a prospect or a project when he was in the process of getting drafted. So I think those are going to be 2 positions to look at. We obviously saw how Mahomes looked when his offensive tackles weren't really good in Super Bowl 55 against the Bucs. So I think that's an interesting thing of note to look at.
Chargers, you bring in Harbaugh, obviously. They get your boy Ladd McConkey, who I like. Really good player. I'm fascinated by their skill players around Justin Herbert. Gus Edwards is your running back. You've got Josh Palmer. You've got McConkey. You've got DJ Chark, and Will Dissly is your starting tight end. I just don't think that the skill guys are good enough for this team to be something in year 1 of Harbaugh.
See, I would say that, except for the scheme that I think Greg Roman's going to bring, which I think it's going to be a ground and pound offensive scheme, where I do think that their offensive line's good enough to push opposing defenses downfield. They've got J.K. Dobbins, who I think has played really well in limited playing time due to injuries. They got Gus Edwards, who has been a fairly durable and explosive running back, downhill running back. Yeah, the skill position players, the wide receivers, the pass catchers, they're not good. I mean, it's the worst in the league, I think, with Ladd McConkey coming in from Georgia. I know I was big on him, but you still have Joshua Palmer there. And you don't really have a third wide receiver. I mean, who's their third wide receiver? DJ Chark or Brendan Rice. I mean, that's not the greatest.
But Brendan Rice. Do you know who his dad is, Mick?
I do. I did not know that until like after he got drafted. But
we talked about this on this podcast before. Or maybe you didn't know it until we talked about it on the podcast.
Yeah. That's what I think it was. Defense, I still think looks decent. I think probably middle of the road. Khalil Mack had a really good year last year. Looked like he really returned back to form. You got Joey Bosa back for another year, which I still think he's got some left in the tank. Had a down year last year, but wasn't terrible. He was still pretty decent. You got players like Tuli Tuipulotu, who's going into his, I think, second year. Yep, his second year out of USC. He was a second-round draft pick. And, year two of, or, my bad, year 5 of Alohi Gilman, who had a breakout season last year. So I think there's some encouraging spots on this defense as well.
The Raiders, you got Minshew Mania as your starting quarterback, at least for now. Who knows? I'm fascinated to see who will be starting when the Bengals host them in early November. They add Christian Wilkins to the defense. First 2 draft picks were interesting as well. They get Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers Johnson, who in some instances you could say were both really good value on both of those picks. Bowers at one point you were thinking could potentially be a top 10 pick. I think that kind of dropped as the season went along and as the draft got nearer and nearer. But there were some mock drafts that had JPJ going to the Bengals. You saw him even creeping up that high. I don't think he was ever really a candidate at that point, but you saw some of those teams that needed a center potentially looking at grabbing him. Raiders, they're not a threat in this division at all, I don't think. It'll be interesting to see, though, how Marv does.
Yeah. Wishing him the best. I love Marvin Lewis and what he did for the franchise. So I hope they have a good season. But with that being said, I think the Raiders are looking at a top 5 draft pick this year. One, they have not really upgraded the QB position. I know Minshew is going to be the starter, but it could very well be Aiden O'Connell at some point in the season. The skill position, not much of one. Skill position players, the pass catchers aren't great. They're not terrible. You obviously have Devontae Adams coming back, who's been one of the best wide receivers of the past decade. Got Jacoby Myers coming back in as a slot, but they don't really have a good number 3 wide receiver. I guess you got Trey Tucker coming in for a second season. That's not, I think that leaves some to be desired there. Offensive line could be decent. With Colton Miller coming back, Andre James at center, Thayer Munford had a decent year last year, but really their defense is what kind of scares me. They don't really have any elite defensive backs. One of their defensive backs is actually really not good in Ja'Cory Bennett. I know they upgrade the pass rush with Christian Wilkins coming in. You got another year of Max Crosby, but I don't think that this is a great roster as a whole.
Broncos, Bo Nix. That's what is Bo Nix? They do. I like the draft pick that they were able to combine him with Troy Franklin, who is a guy that we talked a lot about for the Bengals as a day 2 potentially. We knew that they were going to go day 2 wide receiver. He was a guy we discussed at length. And he was even there when the Bengals did take Jermaine Burton. And if my memory's right, he ended up falling to the 4th round, didn't he? I think he fell.
Troy Franklin did move to the 4th round.
Yeah, so it was interesting to see. The biggest storyline for the Broncos this offseason was that they got rid of Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And
good for them.
Yes. And we'll have to quickly jump through that before we jump into the North here, because we got to get through them as well.
Oh God. You want to? Yeah. Okay. Because
we'll be talking about the Broncos in late December as well.
Yeah, we will be. Anyways, Broncos, I think that they're in a transitional year. I don't think that they're going to be like a bottom 5 team in the league just because they have Sean Payton as their head coach. But they have had some turnover. You have a rookie quarterback who also is kind of not a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, who's had quite a bit of starts in his collegiate career. But yeah, your wide receiver room isn't great. You got Josh Reynolds in from Detroit. You got year 2 of Marvin Mims. Troy Franklin's coming in as a rookie, and I think he'll probably end up starting pretty quickly. Defense was really bad last year. it's not going to get much better this year. But yeah.
And I don't even, do we need to pick a division winner? I mean,
Chiefs.
Chiefs. You want to know why the Chiefs keep getting the 1 seed? Part of it is that they're really good, and I know they didn't last year. Part of it is that they're really good, and part of it is that their division is not very good.
It's the new AFC East.
It is, yeah,
which was,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah. No, you're exactly right. Was not the AFC East or the AFC West? That's the AFC North.
No.
Brutal division when it comes to it, because I think we can make an argument. Maybe not for the Steelers winning the division, unless you see something vintage Russell Wilson or what you think you're getting from Justin Fields. But I think you can make an argument for almost any of these teams to win this division. We'll start with the Ravens. For me, the biggest question when you look at Baltimore this year is they lost a lot on that defense. They lose their defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald. You lose Geno Stone. You lose Patrick Queen. How much are those losses going to impact them? They lost a lot on the offensive line as well.
They did.
And their offensive line their offensive line last year wasn't really that good to begin with. I mean, it was probably middle of the road offensive line, if not even middle to bottom tier. I don't know if you had that stat in front of you or not. So that's a big question. But then you bring in Derrick Henry. But like I talked about with Joe Mixon, Father Time is undefeated. And Derrick Henry is, like Joe Mixon, a very old running back. Now, Derrick Henry is a different running back than Joe Mixon. For one, he is a behemoth of a human being. But Ravens are fascinating to me, because I think you mentioned last year that they're a regression candidate. I don't know that they're a regression candidate this year, but it also wouldn't stun me.
Yeah. They did lose a lot on the offensive line. You have players like Kevin Zeitler, John Simpson, Morgan Moses leaving. You have Andrew Voorhees, who don't remember what he did in the combine. Did he break his leg or tear his ACL? He suffered a season-ending injury at the combine, which you don't see happen very often. It was kind of cool because you watched him do the bench press with like a torn ACL or a torn Achilles or something like that. So he's coming in to take over that left guard spot. Roger Rosengarten coming in, second round pick out of Washington. I was decently high on him in the draft. Daniel Falele is going to take over that right guard spot. Can he rebound from a not great 2023 season and take over that spot? That starting spot. Now you do have Derrick Henry coming in. I know you think Father Time's going to catch up to him eventually. I'll believe it when I see it. He looked really good last year behind a putrid Titans offensive line. I'm still I still think he's going to be really good in this offense. The defense hasn't seen a little bit of turnover. I don't think it's been terrible. I mean, you still brought back Justin Madubuike, but you did lose a guy like Patrick Queen, who I think had a decent or a much improved 2023 season. You still have Kyle Hamilton, one of the best safeties in the league, in the backfield, and Marcus Williams, probably a top 5 safety duo still. So
the Mike McDonald factor is interesting too.
Yes, it is. Now it is
really interesting.
Now it is something to note that it is somebody coming within Mike McDonald's system to kind of take that over.
It is, but it's somebody that's never called a defense before.
Yep.
And you never know. You never really know how that's going to work out. Browns, let's quickly go into them. To me, I mean, it all surrounds Deshaun Watson. Because I think if we're being honest, Mick, is this the best roster in the AFC North?
Top to bottom, I still don't think it is, but I think
you could make an argument. You could make an argument. I think for this roster being one of the best in the AFC North, and I'm saying if you take out the quarterback position, because it's all going to surround. If Deshaun Watson plays like you saw him in Houston, this team could win the division. If he is like Deshaun Watson we've seen, this team's not winning the division.
Yeah. I still think the wide receiver room has a lot to be desired. I know you have Amari Cooper, who has been an underrated wide receiver, very steady, really good number one. wide receiver, and then you brought in Jerry Jeudy, who's been a decent route runner in the league, but he's kind of been a disappointment. You don't have really a number 3 wide receiver. I guess that's David Njoku, but if you're looking at wideouts, who's your number 3 guy? Is it
Elijah Moore,
Cedric Tillman? I mean, neither of those guys really.
The Reds manager's getting ready to drive up 71 or 75 or whatever it is. Yeah,
David Bell, wide receiver out of Purdue. So I think the wide receiver room or the pass catching room still. I'm still not thrilled with that. Also with the backs that they have, Nick Chubb has never really been much of a receiving back. Jerome Ford, same deal. Also isn't that great in general. Offensive line still pretty good. Jedrick Wills coming back after a disappointing year last year, but he's had some decent success in the league. You also have Joel Petonio, Ethan Pocic, Wyatt Teller, and then Jack Conklin coming back after tearing an ACL in week 1 last year. One thing of note is, are we going to see a regression out of this Browns offensive line because Bill Callahan's gone? I think there's a good chance we do. Yeah,
it's really interesting to see. Steelers, Russell Wilson will be the starter. One. How many games does Russell Wilson start? What are you setting the over-under?
I'd set it probably.
Our injury is thrown out. Injury is thrown out in this scenario.
I'd say 10. Over under 10.
That's probably about right. I'm interested in when their bye week is, because that might be it. That might be the time where they would consider making the switch to Justin Fields. I mean, that defense is still that defense. You add Patrick Queen in there. You still got Bosa, or not Bosa. You've got Watt. I'm getting tired, Mick. You still got TJ Watt in there. The offense, I mean, I am not on, obviously, Team Russell Wilson. I'm not really on Team Justin Fields. The running back position is a question. But I think the interesting wild card with this, and it's the carrot that has been dangled above us for what's been like the last month, is do they finally make the trade for Brandon Ayuk? I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I see it now. But I don't know, even if they did, that would take this team to potentially win the division.
No, because I don't think they have the quarterback to do it. I mean, I think Russell Wilson's been a shell of himself for the past couple of seasons. Now, I think a lot of it has to do with, he relied so much on his ability to scramble in his younger years, and he just can't do it anymore.
He's old.
Also, the guy just refuses to throw to the middle of the field, probably because he's at a height disadvantage, which isn't great. You got Justin Fields, a guy who has had, I think, pretty poor pocket presence his entire NFL career. Hasn't been able to manage a pass rush that well, even though he is probably the fastest quarterback in the league, not named Lamar Jackson. And then, I think the wide receiver room, that's going to be interesting to look at. You got Roman Wilson coming in from Michigan as a 2nd round or a 3rd round draft pick. Who I think played really well in his time at Michigan, but Deontay Johnson is out. He is in Carolina this year. So I think that the offense is probably going to hold this team back quite a bit. I do think the defense is going to be really good again this year. I still think it's a top 10 unit. You have a really good edge rushing duo in Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt. Patrick Queen coming in for Baltimore. You got Deshaun Elliott coming in for Miami, a really good safety to pair with Minka. So I think that this defense has the potential to be a top 10 unit. Their biggest question is probably going to be the cornerback room with, you have Joey Porter Jr. coming back, but you don't have, the other 2 starters at corner aren't that great. You got Beanie Bishop, a rookie out of West Virginia, who I don't really know much about at all. And then you've got Dante Jackson, who's been so-so in his career in Carolina. So, that's the Steelers for me.
How about the last team here? The Bengals. And to do our Bengals here, first thing I want to ask you, Mick, is really quick. What's the Bengals' biggest strength?
Quarterback.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. Biggest concern?
Run defense.
Yeah, it's got to be that. Alrighty. You ready to go week by week here? We'll whip it through. Do you have your week by week in front of you, or do you have the record that you're going to, or do I need to make that? Because I have mine in front of me.
No, I've got it. I've got it. Or
okay, so let's go week by week here. I don't think we're doing this as a contest. I think it's more of just so at the end of the week, at the end of this, when we go through this here, we have what our record is going to be. Okay, week 1, hosting the Patriots. We can change our pick to next week's show when we make this. Obviously, we can change all of these picks. Do the Bengals beat the Patriots week 1 and open 1-0 for the first time in a couple of years?
Yes.
I agree, yes. Week 2, Bengals travel to the Chiefs. Win or loss?
Loss.
I agree, but here's my hot take. If the Chiefs beat the Ravens week 1, the Bengals win.
Yeah. I also have the Ravens beating the Chiefs week 1, by the way.
Yeah, so to me it is, if the Chiefs are 0-1, the Bengals lose. If the Chiefs are 1-0, the Bengals win.
Okay.
So I think the Chiefs are going to be 1-1 after week 2, and it's just the AFC North is going to get one of those 2 games. Commanders on Monday Night Football.
Win.
Yeah. At the Panthers.
We'll be at this game.
We will. So they got to win. I'm going to say win, but this game shouldn't scare me, but it does.
Yeah, it doesn't scare me at all. Win.
Home against the Ravens. I'm going to say win.
Loss.
I'm going to say win. They beat the Ravens. At the Giants on Sunday Night Football.
Big win.
Loss.
Okay.
Prime time. There you go. So there it is. Hey, Bengals drop one of these games.
You got to snap the Sunday Night Football losing streak eventually.
Yes.
This is probably their best opportunity to do it.
At the Browns, loss.
Yeah, I'll go with the loss.
Joe Burrow can't win in Cleveland for some reason. Home against the Eagles, win.
Loss.
Home against the Raiders, win.
Win.
At the Ravens on Thursday Night Football, loss.
Loss.
At the Chargers,
win.
Loss. I don't know. At West Coast, I have bad memories from Cincinnati. Bye week, win or lose?
Win.
Tie. Home against the Steelers after the bye week. Zach Taylor's been really good after bye weeks. I'm saying win.
I'm going loss on this one, actually.
Ooh. At the Cowboys on Monday night. Loss. At the Titans.
Win.
I'm agreeing, but this is one of those that wouldn't shock me. Home against the Browns on Thursday Night Football.
Win.
I agree, win. The record for divisional road teams on Thursday Night Football is atrocious. I think it's something like 20% winning percentage.
Now, we have seen the Bengals on the ass end of this as the home team on Thursday Night Football against the Browns. I don't know if you recall the worst game we've ever seen Andy Dalton play, but that was the Thursday Night Football.
No, that wasn't the No, that was further back. Yes. That was the 0.3 passer rating or whatever it was, or what was his passer rating that game? I think it was the lowest possible passer rating. Yes, I blocked that game out of my memory. Home against the Broncos. I'm saying win.
Oh, win.
At the Steelers to close the year. I'm going to say loss because the Steelers are guaranteed to be 8-8 that game. And Mike Tomlin, he has something in the football gods to go 9-8. So I'm going to say the Bengals lose that game at the Steelers. So I have the Bengals 10-7. What do you have them at?
10-7 as well.
Interesting.
I have a win in the closing game against the Steelers.
So for the most part, we're pretty similar with that. I am intrigued by how this season is going along. 10-7 to me is you're making the wild card, you're not winning the division. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that 10-7 is a good chance to make the wild card, but I think they're fighting for that spot. I don't think that's a solidified wild card spot, just given how loaded the AFC really is. Because I think you're going to have some teams in the similar range, right? I think you're going to have the Chargers probably be in that range, the Jets, the Steelers, and the Browns. I think the Browns are honestly better than a 10-7 team. I have the Dolphins at 12-5.
Oh, interesting.
So I think there's only 3 wild card spots. I think it's going to be between really the Bengals, the Jets, and the Chargers as to who that third wild card spot goes to.
So are we in agreement that the Ravens do win the division?
Yes.
I do. But I guess this is the question. And I mean, we could literally have spent the entire hour plus on today's show talking just about the AFC North because there are so many aspects of it. Also, breaking news, the Reds lost again. Great. They've now lost 2 straight.
How many games?
I don't even
games
know.
under 500 are they now?
I don't even know.
We've given up.
I feel bad. They have no pitching. But Rhett Lauder is making his debut on Friday. So that at least is
I'm excited for that.
Friday night, you should go and see Rhett Lauder make his debut in person.
We are 6 games under 500 now.
Lost me with a terrible prediction. I'm about to unsubscribe. T. Brookie, no. Well, what's so terrible about it? We both said 10-7 wild card. We both said wild card.
You're still making the playoffs.
10-7, making the playoffs. Ravens win the division. I don't think that's crazy. But, I mean, if we're setting this up, percentage chance for each team to win the division, how are you separating this?
Oh, shit.
Just off the cusp. It doesn't necessarily need to be that. So I think I'm going to go Ravens. I'm going to say 35. So T. Brookie says 12-5. Hey, listen, it could happen.
That's not too far off from us, T. Brookie.
To me, T. Brookie and Mick, I know I can speak for you in saying this.
2 games away. At least I picked us to beat the Giants.
Well, hey, you know what? To me, we are both worried about the run defense. If the run defense is better, 12-5, heck, 12-5 with this schedule could be a floor if the run defense is even average.
Yeah. That it is a legitimate worry just because, I mean, I know there could be worse problems to have. Like, I'd rather have a bad run defense and a bad pass rush, which I think is kind of the case. I think we've got a really decent pass rush and a pretty bad run defense, or a really bad run defense. But there comes a limit to this, right? Like, how bad is too bad for run defense? How bad is, so bad that you're the Chargers from a couple of years ago or last year or whatever, where you're giving up 6 yards a carry to opposing running backs? I mean, that's something to keep in mind. Now, I do think the secondary is going to be much improved over this year. I think Dax Hill is going to have a really good year at corner. Good year from CTB. The safeties, I think, are going to have better communication. Whatever that mixture is between Stone, Battle, and Bell, is Lou going to run out 3 safety sets? How is he going to counter how weak his interior defensive line is going to be interesting to see.
You know what? Okay, T. Brookie has changed my mind. They're now going 11-6. They're beating the Giants. There we go. There we go. He's changed my mind. He's talked me into it here, Mick, that they're going to beat the Giants. There we go. Even though I'm worried, Sunday Night Football. But I mean, listen, that is the optimistic take here that T. Brookie is writing in. He says the Steelers are terrible. I don't know that they're necessarily terrible. Their offense might be, though. Browns have no quarterback. That's a legitimate question of what Deshaun Watson is, and the Ravens don't have an offensive line. That's the optimistic take from a Bengals fan of why the Bengals can win the AFC North.
It is an optimistic take. Yeah, I don't know. That's the Raven. I still think the Ravens' offensive line is going to be fine. We've seen them plug and play starters for the past however long Harbaugh has been there, and they've always seemed to be decent. So I think, I don't know about that. But
the name of our show today is Bengals Super Bowl Dreams. Realistic or not? Mick, I ask you, Bengals Super Bowl Dreams, is it realistic or is it not?
I'll tell you what. If we make it to the tournament at the end of the year with Joe Burrow under quarterback, it's always going to be realistic just because of the stuff that he's made out of, the way he's performed, or the team as a whole has performed in the postseason. They've always risen to the occasion. So yeah, I think it's realistic that they could make it. I think that I'm not as hopeful as maybe I was in 2022. I think I'm more hopeful than I was last year, because I think we fixed the safety room.
But see,
And that was an issue last year. And I don't think I was entirely truthful last year when I was doing.
I was going to say, if I remember correctly, when we did this podcast 1 year ago, I think 2 idiots got onto this podcast.
I tried to be optimistic,
and both predicted the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. I'm not naming who those idiots might be, but we were both proven very wrong. But then again, we also didn't predict that Joe Burrow was going to
go down.
Exactly. Yeah. Who wins the AFC and who wins the NFC? Let's make our predictions right now.
Chiefs and Eagles for me.
I think we're gonna have a rematch. Chiefs, Niners. Niners get him this time.
Okay. I think the Niners are up there too. I think that them and the Eagles are. I think that's going to be the big battle this year again.
Thoughts on the Lions?
I think they'll be about.
We've already gone long enough. I think this is our longest show ever. So why not have just a couple of more takes here on the Lions? Because that's an interesting team as well.
Yeah, I think they'll be the same. I think they upgraded the defense with bringing in DJ Reader. Their cornerbacks. I mean, they added Terrion Arnold to that defensive back room. Yeah, I think that they're going to be a decent team this year. I think they'll be about the same as they were last year.
I'm interested to see if somebody can knock the Chiefs off the pedestal because, like we just talked about as well, is the biggest factor that the Chiefs have is that they have the easiest path to the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah.
Because they have 6 games against their division where they will be heavily favored probably in 5 of them.
Yeah.
I mean, you could maybe say that they will not be favored. I mean, and they probably still will be favored at the Chargers. But it'll be interesting. So T. Brookie, he writes in and he says, Ravens had everything perfect last year and fell down at the finish line. This year, Lamar is going to try and play at 205 pounds with 3 new offensive linemen and a new defensive coordinator. You're
not wrong.
No, he's not. And listen, Mick, I don't know how much of this I've had on this discussion. Lamar Jackson, to me, is a great, how do I want to word this?
Regular season quarterback.
Yeah, but he stinks the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why I said he's a great regular season quarterback.
And he is a great runner, but he is an average passer. And when you combine those two things, I don't know how much of you have to be able to pass the ball to win the Super Bowl. In today's day and age.
Unless if you're 2015 Peyton Manning.
Yes, but that's also 10 years ago.
Yeah, it is.
And it's the game has changed since then, and that's also Peyton Manning, and Lamar Jackson is not Peyton Manning. But I'm interested to see how this season goes, though, and we are only 11 days away from giving it. T. Brookie, I hope you stay subscribed to us.
Yeah,
I hope you stay subscribed to us. We appreciate you. And all of the work that you've been doing. And we hope you join us next week. On next week's show, we are trying to, and if all goes as planned, we will be talking to one of our cohorts on the Fan-Sided Podcast Network, one of our buddies from the Patriots podcast. Because, Mick, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of questions to ask him, like already.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't have any right now, but I'll
I've already sitting there thinking, like, to me, it's Bill Belichick. What's that mean now? You don't have him. I know Mayo is a disciple. How does that go along? What is Drake May? How do Patriots feel about that guy and so on? I'm just really interested to see how all of that goes along. So make sure you join us next week. We'll be able to talk with him, and we'll dive all the way into that game, expectations and so on for Bengals versus Patriots. Remember to follow us on our social media channels. We are on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We are on your favorite podcasting platform as well. Give us a 5-star rating that way, and stay subscribed to us on our YouTube channel. Stay subscribed. It's free. We don't ask for anything else, right, Mick? We don't ask for anything else. We appreciate you, Steve. Hey, there we go. We brought you back. Any parting thoughts this week, Mick?
No. Have a good Labor Day weekend. Stay safe out there. Watch some college football if you get the chance, and Week 1's next week, so we'll be previewing that. Can't wait.
Enjoy the fireworks if you're going to go. I know the Bengals supposedly have some connection in with a drone show. Isn't that what I hear, right? I think something that the Reds and Bengals are combining during the fireworks for a drone show. I don't know, because they're trying to kick off the open and orange week with the fireworks. So it'll be really interesting to see. We look forward to that. So we'll see you back here next week. Vic, we'll see you then. Who Dey?
Who Dey? Thanks for watching.